don't think that that's possible. And by the way, at this very moment, I might add, you have a better academic base than we have. You have 16 A-rated scientists, we have 5. We have 2, we went up to 5. You have 16. Your staff-student ratios are half what our staff-student ratios are. But let me address the issue that we recruited. Yes, absolutely. My job as a vice-chancellor, my job as currently the deputy vice-chancellor, is to go after academic talent. But it's also to develop them and retain them. Which has UJ has the most ambitious development program at the moment. We have something called the New Generation Scholars. Our argument was the scholarship program is premised on middle-class students. So what do? We offer a 25 million rand project, 17 million raised from the private sector. 17 million raised from the private sector. We offer master's students 80,000 rand per annum for 2 years. We take the top 50% and we give them a PhD grant for 150,000 for 3 years. And we guarantee them a job at the end of the year. How did we pay for it? For the actual bursaries, we raised money and we used bursaries. How do we pay for putting them onto the staff payroll? We modeled our attrition rate. And we then adapted the modeling of our attrition rate to bring these people onto the permanent payroll. Now there are rules that manage this process to make sure that we do so for people. But that's generating a new generation of scholars. It's the most ambitious program. And I might add, it started 2 years before the Carnegie Gill program started without any of the cash from the Carnegie program. That is a development program, it seems to me. The thing about academic remuneration, I said 3 things. The first thing is a moderation of expectations. If I were to be offered this thing and people think I'm going to double salaries the next year, it's not happening. A moderation of expectations is going to have to happen. And that's why I speak about a university pact. It has to be shared sacrifice. But I've also believed, after an executive tenure in 3 institutions, 2 institutions, the HSRC and partly even UKZN, the HSRC and UJ, you have to deal with the problem of remuneration and financial incentives. If you bury your head in the sand and say the academy is an equal socialist space, you will never attract the kinds of people you need. Financial incentives are absolutely crucial. And because we didn't have large amounts of cash, unlike what people think, we use the research subsidy in clever ways. So what do? We direct the research subsidy to people's research costs. We give them a portion. An international publication earns 33,000. A national publication earns 22,000. But I'll tell you what we do after that. We say to you, don't come to us for travel grants. We took off the burden of the cost, but we also gave the benefit to the most productive research. Now we have checks and balances. New researchers can claim travel grants. You junior members of staff who are developing the research platforms can do so. But you cannot get away from the need for incentives. And that's something that I would put on the table. The final question is brain drain. How would I do it? Well, I told you. I think the first job of one of the biggest jobs of a vice chancellor is to attract talent and retain them. And how do you retain them? You retain them by creating an enabling environment. You create a place where they can do research, a place where they can get research equipment, a place where their productivity is recognized. That's how you retain talent anyway. And it's the first principles that it seems to me you have to do, whether it's FITS, UJ, or anywhere else.
Thank you. Mr. Dirkje?
Thanks, Professor Habib. Ulrich Lecture from the School of Mathematics. Let's have a policy, and let me just quote you some figures. Our academic staff, 36% of them are paid at the very, very bottom of the pay scales. 60% of them are paid in the first quartile. I believe it is the policy of this university that if you get promoted at the university, you go to the lowest possible rank in the promotion scale. If you come in from outside, you are often paid at the 90th percentile. Now, this is a policy that I believe we learned from you, Jack. Because in fact, some of our A-rated social scientists, the only one in the country, I believe, came to you on the basis of a specialized salary scale. Now, if that's what you're going to bring here, I'm afraid you're going to be very unpopular.
Wow. Very direct. That's best. That's good.
Hi, my name is Nina from SRC. The question I would like to ask is around outsourcing at Wits University. I don't know if you've heard any of news, but there's a lot of contestation around outsourcing of our workers, specifically cleaners, the programs to maintain gardens and so on. So I would like to know what's your view on outsourcing at an institution like Wits, and how you would change things.
The gentleman against the wall had his hand up a long time ago. Nobody's taking the mic.
My name is Justice from the West SRC. Prof, my question is merely to say that it must be noted that students formulate a huge population within the institution. Now, what I would like to know is that what is then your plan in as far as the role of students in governance? What do you aim to change what that is already there? Because if you would note, when the staff was marching for increase, we were marching for a better life and the decrease in student fees. So what do you think that the student structures as far as governance can play a part in the university? Thank you.
Let me start with again, I think, we have to clarify issues. By the way, I played a big role in negotiating salaries. This myth that we gave 300,000 or 200,000 extra is a myth. By the way, I've looked at the salary scales. I looked at the BIT salary scales when I negotiated it. I look at the UKZN salary scales and the UCT salary scale. We don't have this thing that we pushed. What we do is we did three things, by the way. We do give an increase, and the increase is 10% above what you get. Sometimes we've moved to 15%. And by the way, we did have the problem you suggested, because a large number of people did come in, and they did negotiate better salaries. And so what the university did is it addressed the issue of internal salary scales. And so at the moment, we've moved from about 50, on the 50 percentile, we moved to 65. Our target is to go to 75%, by the way, because that's where UCT is based. And whether you like it or not, if your competitors are at 75%, you've got to muck a plan to get there. If you don't muck a plan, you are in trouble. The question is how you do it. The question is how you do it. But if you come, we have currently an excellence category now, where we pay those professors on the top end. They're very select. They're the top 10. They are A-rated and some of them B-rated, some of our top researchers and teachers. And they get an exceptional scale. Now people say that that's UJ. Actually, it's UCT. Actually, it's UKZN. There is a special scale for super remunerated professors in all of our institutions. And that exists. But generally, you ask me what I would do. Well, if most of your staff are at lower than 36%, then I'll have to look at the data. And 60% are in the first quartile. And if your competitors are elsewhere, you've got a problem. You've got to sit down and work out. And the big issue is how you do it within the context of the resources you have. How do you grow your income to enable you to do those kinds of things? And it seems to me that that's the crucial thing. I want to come back to that last, because other questions are also related. Outsourcing. By the way, anybody who says that labor brokering doesn't work hasn't been in a public institution, not only universities. In major parastatals, there's been whole-scale outsourcing. And the labor standards of the workers have declined. Let's be blunt about it. And we did that because it served a particular purpose. wanted to bring our incomes down, our expenses down, we wanted to increase our incomes, and the challenges that have come from a decline in state subsidy. That's why we did it. Problem is, you've got to address it. Now, you can't address it simply by saying, and I'd be irresponsible to say, I'm going to get rid of outsourcing. But I will sit down and say, how do we work out an arrangement that tells us that we can try and speak to our values and ethics, including good labor standards, in a responsible way with our finances. You can do everything in the next 3 years and bankrupt the place. The question is, how do you strike the balance between your financial tensions and your values, your needs, your expenditures, requirements, etc. And it brings me to your issue about the challenges around student governance, the demands, the competing demands for academics who want increased salaries and students who want lower fees. All of this poses two things. Is how do you manage the tension between income constraints and expenditure that you need? It seems to me three things need to happen. The lessons are you need to grow income, and you need to think through how you grow income. The second, you need to look at your resource flows within your budgets. We drew incentives by simply redirecting resource flows. What we did is simply took the existing money, and instead of giving it to the URC, we redirected it to the codes of researchers, and then took away their travel grants, which was a cost in the URC. It was a redirecting of existing resource flows. It seems to me it's absolutely crucial. The third part is Adam Habib or any vice chancellor is never going to be able to make a magic bullet and make all of these problems go away. That's why I start off with the University Pact, an alliance between students, staff, management, and all other internal stakeholders, alumni, etc., to sit down and say, we have to manage the competing demands. And how do we manage these competing demands? Finally, I think the most important thing of a vice chancellor, by the way, is to have 3 or 4 people when you're managing those demands. You have all of the constituencies you have to engage. That's why a university pact is so crucial. Why a social pact in South Africa is so crucial. Why we need the moderation of expectation. But I would like, at my elbow, the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, the Chair of the Finance Committee, the Chair of the Audit Committee, and the Chair of the Council themselves. Because this is a collective decision. And the precise mix of what fees against academic salaries, against costs on research equipment, against costs on new salaries, all of that is going to come from a mix, I said, between new income and a reprioritization of the budget, and a prioritization of the plan. And that's not going to happen unless you have a university pact. And this is not going to happen.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're going to have to stop now.